Okay, we are live. I'm going to make sure it's working. If you can hear us, let us know. Either way, if you can or can't. Let's see. I'm going to check and see if it's working. Let's see. Oh, cool. Okay, I can see us moving, and I think. Okay, I can hear. Oh, wait. 1 second. It's so cool.
We're live, right?
Yeah, I was the problem. I didn't have the light to open and another thing. Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our live show for the January pick for the Crusty Club. I can see people commenting, so I'm guessing everyone can hear us. Okay, I'm getting used to the fact that I lost my voice after screaming so much at the thing I went to yesterday. I'm like, ugh. So if I pause at any moment, just know it's because my voice is disappearing. But anyway, like I said, welcome to the Crusty Club live show. Today we're talking about 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. And I am very excited for this. But before we talk about this book and before the co-hosts introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what types of books they like reading, I'm going to go ahead and also remind everyone that we are in February reading The Love Hypothesis. I don't have my copy with me, but that's our February pick, and we'll be having the live show for that in March, probably the first or second week. And if you love romance books that follow protagonists that are, working in any sort of STEM field, if you're like a fan fiction fan, I think it's like fan fiction of Star Wars or something. I don't know anything about Star Wars, but I've heard a lot of people say that. And I recently finished it, so I'm excited for that live show. So that's our February pick, like I said. And then next month in March, we are reading The Push, which is I'm so excited for this because I picked this purely because of Monae. And I'm just so excited because this is a psychological drama about a woman named Blythe who she's a mother and she's trying to figure out what's going on with her daughter. She just feels like something is off, something's wrong, and she doesn't quite know what it is. And then she has a second child, I believe, and that's like easy breezy, I guess. And so she's trying to figure out what's going on. I haven't read this yet, obviously, so I'm really, really looking forward to it because Monae has hyped up this book so much, and I just can't wait to read it. But yeah, that's our March pick, and we'll probably be having the live show for that at the very end of March or the very beginning of April. So yeah, those are our picks for February and March, and then I will be announcing things for after that up until June pretty soon. So make sure you follow the Bookstagram account, which will be linked in the description below, so you can check out what we're going to be reading up until June. And now that my announcements are done, I'm going to let the two co hosts introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their content or what types of books they enjoy reading.
Cool. I'll go first. I'm Brea. You can find me at Tales of Tales on YouTube and Instagram. My content's like, I would say, it's just like pretty laid back, experimental a little bit on my Instagram. I just like trying new things. My reading taste, I would say I usually tend to read like sci-fi and fantasy, mystery thrillers, but I've also been dabbling in romance here or there, especially when the protagonists are people of color. So, yeah, I'm excited that Chanel has offered me to be a part of this, and I'm happy to be here.
I am Monae from the channel Life is Monae, and I read a lot of things: adult fantasy, YA sci-fi, a lot nonfiction. I read a lot of random things, whatever I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Monae also has a not a book club where they read like nonfiction books. So if you're like interested in that, getting into nonfiction, definitely check out her channel. And I will have all the like links and stuff to both of my co-hosts' social medias down below, so you can check out their socials and you can follow them because they both have really, really good reading tastes. So check that out. Look at Brea. She's like, I do. I see someone's excited for The Push, so that looks like a good pick.
It is. It's a great book.
We are not going to go into talking about 7 Days in June. So the way we always do it, going through non-spoilery thoughts first, and then we'll get into spoilers, and I'll let everyone know when we're getting into spoilers. I typically have questions that I like prepare and I send to my co-host, but guys, this book,
Yeah.
I just need stream of consciousness. I just need to hear what both my co-hosts have to say, and then everyone who's read it. I really want to know what you all think because I have not rated the book. So I guess that's me saying what my rating was. I didn't have one. So, and I'm going to keep my thoughts until Monae and Brea say what they think.
I'm like so interested. Like, I really want to hear your thoughts about it.
I will go last because I don't want to, my thoughts are all over the place. So, one of you go first.
I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I also have thoughts.
Now I'm second guessing it because Chanel's like, Brie has great rating taste, and I'm over here like, I give it 5 stars. And so depending on what you think, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, if you give it 5 stars. So since you gave it 5 stars, tell us why. Because I think me and Monae probably have similar thoughts about this book. So I want to know like kind of why you gave it 5 stars.
Yeah, so my take on it, I think, is that it was very realistic. I think it's like a realistic take on like the idea of like soulmates. I think people tend to like glorify or like glamorize what like some relationships look like and what like a soulmate could look like. And I like the fact that this was very realistic. Like people aren't perfect. And that I don't want to get into spoilers, but that they did work for themselves to try to improve, and they didn't just like rely on each other and just like create more toxicity, I guess. Yeah, and I was telling Chanel before this that it's just like not like a book I've ever read before, especially when it comes to like the romance genre. I just think it was just very rooted in reality. So yeah, that's most of the reason that I gave it 5 stars, because I tend to gravitate towards things that are like really unique, and I just haven't read anything like this before. And yeah, I'll end it there.
I agree. I think that
I do too.
You did a really good job of not romanticizing such a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that when you have young kids that are full of strong emotions, and then on top of like their youth and their naivete, their judgment was even further impaired by the experiences that they had and they were trying to escape from, and then also their use of drugs and like the way that they cope with one another. And it's so easy to romanticize such a fantasy. And I think that telling that story from an adult standpoint and having these adults come face to face with the idea of like, we were not the best version of what we could have been together in that situation. So I love that part about the book.
Yeah, I think for me, I was saying to Monae how this book was either going to be like a 2-star or a 4-star. And I feel like, and I'll explain why. So when I was getting recommended this book, everybody who recommended this to me was like, this is Black love. Like, it's so amazing. Like, the romance is amazing. It's so good. Like, I cried and screamed. And so when I opened page 1 and I read the like prologue or whatever. When I read the prologue, I was like, okay, she's kind of funny. Okay, we're ready for the romance. And I get to the first chapter, I was like, So like part of my rating is because of my expectations or like part of my thoughts. And I feel like this book, to me, I don't think I would consider this a romance. Like if somebody was asking for a romance recommendation, this is not what I would give them. But if they were asking for a book with a couple or a book with romantic elements, then I'd be like, oh yeah, well, this book, if you're looking for something that has something else, but also a couple, but I wouldn't be like, oh, add this to your February romance reading list.
I don't know if the term applies outside of fantasy, but there's a trope in fantasy that like I love, which is like star-crossed lovers or fated lovers. If there was a way to translate that into like the romance world, this would be not a misconnection, but just wrong place in history, wrong place in time. Like, you know, they would have been perfect, but everything around them was just not right.
Yeah, and it's also because so I was actually reading this book because I'm doing a storygraph challenge that's a romance reading like different tropes. And I was reading this for the second chance romance, which I think like this could be like a second chance, star-crossed lovers type of vibe. But I don't know that while reading it, I was like, oh, this is because to me, romance is like it makes you feel like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Like I want these characters to be in love and to be together, whether or not you're somebody who like experiences romantic attraction or romantic feelings. I feel like when you read a romance, like the point is like you want them to be together and you want them to be like it's happy and like all of these things, like you're feeling all these emotions. But I was literally like sobbing and sad and being like, ah, I hope they don't end up together. Like I'm gonna try and keep spoilers away because we're not in the spoiler section yet. So like while I was reading it, I just kept trying so hard to forget that people recommended this to me as a romance because I do think it has a second chance element, it has a star-crossed element, but I wouldn't like add this to a romance recommendations reading list. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's like why I struggle with rating it. And if I had to choose a rating, I'd probably say 3 stars because I thought the writing was really good and it was really realistic, like you said, Brea. Like it was really realistic. I felt like these people feel real and whole, and they just feel like people who are just not perfect. But I just had so many thoughts about things that are spoiled.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my little spiel.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of times with romance, like that's where I struggle sometimes with romance is because the characters are flawed, but only in like one way.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like these characters were flawed in a way that seemed very like human like. And like I couldn't necessarily relate to them in certain aspects because I've like never been on drugs or addicted to drugs or anything like that. But I think it also just kind of puts a good light on like even people who have had problematic pasts can, potentially find love. Maybe this wasn't the perfect situation for them to do it, but I think it does put like a good light on that too, that just because you've had a troubled past doesn't mean that you don't deserve love and that you can't find it with someone. So, but I agree with your point about like, I don't know if this should be on any like romance list because I think that could be kind of like, and it could potentially put someone in a bad position if it's like on a romance list with like people we meet on vacation or something. Like they're completely two different things. And if someone goes into it thinking that they're going to get like a bright and bubbly, cute little romance, like that's not what this is.
Yeah, I feel like this is like one of those books where if it is like on a romance list, I would want like the caveat is this. You know what I mean? Like going into this, because typically when I think about romance books, I'm expecting that. I know a lot of people might be like, oh, romance is so unrealistic and like floaty and like, but that's the point for me when I read a romance book. Like I want to be like, oh, I'm literally floating on a cloud and I want these people to be only thing but happy, like only happy, and I want to be full of happy emotions. And another thing too that kind of makes me sad is the fact that we don't have that many Black love romance books that get popular and that people talk about a lot. Because even when people talk about romance books, how many times do we see both characters being Black?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I feel like that's why this book was so special. When I saw it, I was like, and then I read it, I was like, but anyways.
I do wish that we had, because of the representation in the book, Black author, Black main characters, Black love, and then the experiences, while they weren't a monolith, I feel like some of us could understand the reality of it. And in their adult timeline, they are at a point where they're coming face to face with the things that they need to work on and work through and resolve. And so I wanted to see more representation of Black people getting help, going to therapy.
Yeah.
Someone, and like even towards the end of the book, even without talking about spoilers, it's like we still are trying to work through something with resources that we don't have, and we're not reaching outside to really explore those resources. And I was just like, I feel like we need to bring more therapy representation into the book.
Yeah, I'm seeing like a ton of 5 stars, which makes me really happy because I saw someone too also say that I'm jumping around in comments, but I'm going to put all of them up anyway. But I saw this and I really think that this is probably not what I would describe it as, but I would definitely talk about the fact that there's a romance in this book. I just think that people advertising it and saying this is a Black love romance, the same way that they would, for example, be like, oh, if you love Talia Hibbert's book, but you're looking for Black love, here's the book. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I felt when people were saying that this was Black love. I was like, oh, it's like going to be that mushy gushy, like I'm ready for it. And I agree with Monae. And I also saw some other things. Like, I really loved the chronic pain representation. I felt like that was so amazing because, again, I think me and Monae had talked about this, but this is an experience that while we didn't have this experience growing up, or we didn't have the experience of, like alcohol abuse or drug addiction or things like that, this is something a lot of people do experience. And it was from the perspective of Black people, which I feel is really important. And really, we don't get that in a sense of like, they're also very successful and people don't see that, especially in Eva, because she like keeps things behind a locked door. And I felt like that is an experience while like we might not, and maybe people in the comments might not, but people who might pick up this book and read it, it might be like, oh, okay, this reminds me of somebody that I know, or this reminds me of somebody that, or myself, you know what I mean? So I feel like it is good that they have the love aspect, but I really do also wish, like Monae said, that there was like some talk about therapy and different things like that as well. So.
In terms of the pain rep, another thing that I like what the author did is medicine, narcotics, painkillers are sometimes needed in society. But the abuse, when she was abusing her medicine, and then when she was using it to really cope with her pain, she did a good job of explaining the balance in your medicine. Someone who goes through chronic pain and they need it, like, you know what I'm saying, they would be legally prescribed it from a doctor. But also you can still abuse your narcotics. And that's something that she did in her younger life. So seeing her balance that as an adult, understanding that it's possible for me to have an unhealthy relationship with these pills and to use it to numb pain outside of the physical realm, to numb pain mentally and emotionally as well. So her journey, I really enjoyed. It's just mostly the romance dynamic, but like even her relationship with her daughter, I really enjoyed. His relationship with some of his students, I really enjoyed. But I also feel like you are so, again, dedicated to helping youth, to teaching in inner city, lower income schools. But as a Black man, how much can you give to little Black boys when you are lacking therapy?
Yeah, I think I really love the comments about the writing, because I think one of the things that I notice a lot with books that have, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. This book, the writing was phenomenal because to me, I was able to picture myself. By the way, we're probably going to get into spoilers now. So if you haven't read the book, this might be a good time for you to leave. But I felt like I could literally picture myself watching these two characters. Like the scene where they're younger and they were at this person's house and they had, like, they were both kind of like asleep, and then Shane woke up and the first thing he did was drink the vodka that was next to him. You remember that scene? And then Eva was like, oh, are you going to keep doing that or whatever, right? And he was like, oh yeah. And then that was just like it. So I think the way that this author shows you what they're suffering with, but also makes it in a way where you're able to empathize with them. Because I feel like a lot of people don't, not that they're unwilling or they just don't want to see it, but I feel like a lot of people don't think and empathize and really want to process why some people might end up getting addicted to something. Because for Shane, it was all about him, being a foster kid, having this happy family. And then that accident was where he then, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel like this book does such a great job at making you really feel why certain things happen. But anyways, you guys take over and share your thoughts. Because I will talk about this forever. And then I'll be like, I don't know what my rating is. So you guys go.
Someone had mentioned like the familial relationships too, which I think was like a good point. Like Audrey was probably one of my favorite characters ever, like her daughter. Yeah. Like she was such like a smart young woman. Like she was like so witty, and I just like really loved that about her. I think when I was first reading it, I was a little like, I guess not like taken aback, but I guess just like the way that she was talking, I was expecting her to be older. But then I think about some of like the younger children I know in like today's society, like that makes sense, like for them to be I guess like a little bit more grown up than, you know, maybe we were at that age. But I did really like the dynamic of her character, and then the relationship that Eva had with her mother. I think was just, you know, it was very, I guess, like nuanced, because I think, you know, like she loved her mother, but also had a very hard time just like accepting, like, not like who her mother was, but like the fact that her mother would put her through certain things as her mother, you know. So I don't know, I always like books that have like a familial aspect, so I think that was something that I thought was really like interesting and I enjoyed about the book.
Yeah.
In terms of Eva's mom, it was ironic that like before I started reading this book, like a week before, I was talking about dynamics between Black mothers and their sons and daughters.
I remember we were talking about that one.
I feel like often in Black homes with Black mothers, especially when they're single, when they have been mistreated and come to see that as the way of the world, they're usually more supportive of their daughter when they are also going through traumatic experiences, also being mistreated by men in society. But to see their daughter not be mistreated, it brings their pain, I guess, full surface. And so usually the daughters that break generational curses have a rocky relationship with the mom sometimes. And I feel like that was kind of depicted in this book too, because when she went through this incident, her mom was there. I'm going to protect you from him. I'm going to do all these things. And like, just basically telling her, you need to cope with the way that this is life. But every time she tried to break generational curses, her mom was the biggest barrier, because misery loves company. And I think that it's a Black trait when you see someone rise above the hood or the projects, or, you know what I'm saying, whatever. Whenever we break prejudices and stereotypes, we immediately start to attack that person, because someone elevating themselves and leaving us at the bottom is a feeling of like weakness, and we want to like attack. And I think that comes through in relationships with Black mothers and their daughters, because we are at a point where some of us are going to college. We're not having a bunch of kids. We're not doing the baby mama, baby daddy drama. We're not doing it. And it makes it hard for our moms to understand us, to relate to us, to talk to us, to like, I don't know how to be there for you because your life is different from mine. And I think that explains Eva's mom.
Yeah, I definitely think her relationship with her mom, because one thing I always think about, especially as an immigrant, is when you are trying to change something, especially like, let's pick an example, like therapy, right? Whether you're an immigrant or not, like with Black communities, it is very difficult to have the conversation of like, maybe we should go to therapy. Or like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Maybe we should.
Literally, like, we have a great relationship, and just telling her one time that I was having anxiety, and you know, talking to her about my anxiety, she's like, "You just need to relax. You just need to calm down." And I'm like,
"You need to pray. You need to do this thing."
That's literally
pray about it.
But therapy.
The pray about it. The put it in God's hands. He'll do the work. Please.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the things. So obviously, like Ava, like as a teenager, went through her own like addiction battle, and like this period in time when her mom was dating that guy, and then they got into the altercation, if you guys remember, in the kitchen. And I felt like her character, just from the jump, is the type of person that takes, like, she's gonna take her freedom. She's gonna take what she needs to take to be free. And to me, Ava just reminded me of like the experience of being like maybe like the oldest daughter, or the daughter that like really is fighting, and you're like, no, I'm gonna do this thing, and I don't care what you say about it, because this is better in the long run. And to me, that's what Ava's character kind of represented for a little bit. It's like when you're younger and you're doing what your parents don't want you to do, but you know, well, outside of the substance abuse and things like that, I just felt like her character, especially writing at a young age, and then like becoming a well-established author, building a life for her and her child. Like, she described the area where they were living, her daughter being like the only Black kid, I think, or the only kid with a single mom. And I just feel like her character just represents somebody who is taking their freedom and is just gonna run with it.
Yeah, I agree. But also, like, her daughter was so outspoken
Yeah.
And sometimes Eva had a hard time relating to her daughter.
Exactly.
She better than her mom. She wants to be more supportive than her mom. But again, like her daughter's living such a different life in such a different world. And sometimes Eva was like a hands-off kind of parent, or I don't really know how to handle the situation. So I'm going to deal with that later. And we don't know which is the right method or which isn't, but it just constantly shows that like the generation between Black mothers and daughters, as much as we make civil justice progress and, progress in the workplace and school, there's always going to be like this, I don't really know how to relate to you. So I do agree with that.
Yeah, I really love this comment because it just made me think about how, again, with like especially mental health, because I feel like especially Black women, you're kind of expected to just work through everything. And that's how Eva's character, like you remember her being at her little like book events, literally going to the bathroom when she's in so much pain. You know what I mean? It just made me think about the expectation of like a successful Black woman or a Black woman in general, like what you're supposed to be able to just handle. And even when she was talking about like Shane, when Shane was like talking about his book and presenting it, and he was like, oh, I didn't really think about anything. Like I just showed up here. Like, and he's just talking. She's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like he could literally say anything and like everybody's falling at his. Right. I'm like the one speech where he literally just said, this is for her. And it was like everybody went crazy. And she's panicking, obsessive, anxiety, and the world was his oyster.
Yeah. Which is also realistic of how today's society is. I feel like with Black men and Black women in relationships, or just in general, I feel like we end up having to like carry a lot of things that people don't realize that we're carrying. And then other people are just kind of like Shane, just like showing up, just doing what he does, and then people praising him for it. So I think that was also just like really representative of like what we have to go through. So that was another thing I appreciate about the book, because it's like people have that analogy of like a duck on water, like you're supposed to be smooth up here, but then you're doing all this work down here, and I feel like that was Eva, like with like being a single mother, having, a chronic illness, and then dealing, with her mother and like all of this kind of stuff. So I think that was just nice to see like how well-rounded she was, but also just like, damn girl, you got a lot going on.
She definitely, me and Chanel were telling a friend recently, like the strong Black woman narrative, kill it.
Yeah. Like, I was gonna say right now, I'm a weak Black woman. Right. And I will
pick me up. I don't want to do this anymore.
No, I think like, because me and Monae were talking about it too. And I think that a lot of times when people see you, especially like when you're a Black woman, they just expect you to take anything. Like, oh, she'll be fine. She's always handling this and that. She'll be okay. Like, she's always said she's doing this thing. So I think for me personally, I will cry about anything. Monae knows I will cry about anything. So, and I feel like this book, it just made me feel for Eva, because I was like, girl, this is hurting you. This is really hurting you. Like, if I was her, I would have broke down on the floor. Like, hey,
like the writing is so good that you could really feel the pain. So like when she was together talking about her books and her characters and then just falling apart in the bathroom, I was just like, girl, I'm stressed out.
When she was describing her makeup and she was like, oh, I made it look all over the place because I know I'm going to be a mess.
I'm like, the amount of like effort that
premeditated. Like, she was ready. Like, she knew that makeup was not gonna last, so she showed up looking a mess already. Like,
I just, and like, since this is Black History Month, I feel like in terms of like slavery, racism, segregation, Jim Crow, we've talked about all of the lasting systematic effects of it, but rarely do we talk about the mental effects. And we have not had there's literally movies called Waiting to Exhale, because none of us has actually like let our breath go and like exhale. Like sometimes I feel like we just need to relax and like just say it, like, I'm not okay. My emotions are everywhere. I'm in a lot of pain. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. I need a second. And like the pressure to hold yourself together. Like the writing was so good in this book because we related to each individual character. I feel like I would not have liked the book if they had ended up together at the end, because they were too toxic and they did not solve anything. They didn't work through anything. They never had serious enough discussions for me for them to try to make this work as an adult. And so when the book ended, I was like, that is kind of abrupt, but also like it makes sense, because if they had entered into this relationship without diving beneath the surface of anything, I don't know if I would have been able to support that.
Yeah, I was very happy. Well, happy is the word. I was very relieved at how the book ended. I was like, oh, because I was like, oh no. I was so concerned when that little girl started talking about her datafornia and how she wants them to be together. And she was like, oh, you got to give Shane another. I was like, no, they both need to just go to therapy and find other people to be with and be friends. Like, because I feel like soulmates does not have to be a romantic thing.
Yeah.
You do not have to date your soulmate. You can just be besties. Like, please.
And soulmates don't always have to end up together. Sometimes those are literally the most toxic relationships. And
Exactly.
It's like, just because you guys are feeling some kindred connection does not mean that you need to end up together.
Yeah.
Learn what you need to learn from it and move on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I really I wanted us to talk
yeah.
about her ex-husband. So, thoughts on that man, the California bro?
Okay, this is, I'm gonna try to say this as less problematic. There is a certain stigma, I guess, around people that are from California as just more relaxed and laid back and easygoing with like the beach vibes or whatever, as compared to like someone on the upper East Coast. And I feel like her husband reminded me of that, and taking home this patient and having to deal with the realities of it just wasn't as fun for him. He wasn't able to like, oh, I'm living this cool breezy life, let me go do this good thing, do this, you know, community service, whatever, serve my city. And then it just became too real for him. And so I don't know if that is what she was trying to depict, because I was just like, not him just giving into this California hippie vibe, not able to like really deal with real things. And like when she talked about his new wife, and like her personality and the things that they would do together, I'm like, that really hit me for Eva, because it's like she was never going to be able to be that person.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if it's just like when I was reading it, I was thinking about like my current like dating life and just like where I'm at. And I was just telling Chanel how like where I live at, like it's like Instagram in real life almost. And I feel like when it comes to a lot of like relationships and marriage and stuff, I think some people have this like idealized version of like what being married looks like. So when those hard things come to fruition, or, they pop up, people are just like, well, this isn't what I envisioned. So like, I'm out, instead of actually accepting someone for like a human being. I think a lot of people just have an idea of like what they want their spouse to look like and act like. And they have this whole idea for their life, which like I get, like you want to have goals, you want to have something to aspire for, but at the same time it's like you also want to marry a human being. It's not going to be perfect all the time. So I was like upset that he just kind of like up and left her. And I mean, I guess I'm glad that we could see like a healthy like co-parenting relationship, but the fact that he just like up and left her when she like actually needed him was just like,
I've been married for 5 years, and by comparison, me and my husband were relatively normal or healthy people, and it still took us 2 years of rockiness to figure out what our reality of life was going to look like. And we didn't come with not nearly as much baggage as she would have. And so, like, I feel like being honest and like realistic about what a marriage is going to look like is already hard. But when you're bringing in a toxic mother and chronic pain and past drug abuse, and when you add all those things to the table, I'm just like, me and my husband had none of this, and it still took us 2 years to figure out what it is that we were doing. So you're starting with 2 feet in the hole. I can only imagine how long it would have took them if they had tried to move past like the toxic parts of their relationship to get to what would resemble healthiness.
Yeah. I think her and her ex-husband in this book reminded me of the main character from All's Well by Mona Awad, which that book also follows a main character that has chronic pain issues. And so I was like drawing connections, because I realized that I felt so bad for Ava, because I felt like she met this guy who was like really happy and bubbly, and she was like, oh my god, this person makes me so happy, and they are so happy, and we're going to be so happy. But then of course she's somebody who is in pain very often. When he like realized, oh wait, like we might not always be able to, let's say for example, like go on a hike or something, that's a very like California activity or whatever, like, or we might not be able to spend all this time outside because we might need to take breaks because she experiences so much pain, or we might need to sit down because maybe she has a migraine, or we might need to leave early because she literally can't function. Like she was literally dizzy, passing out, like all these things because of her migraines, which like if you've experienced migraines frequently, you know, once it starts, you need to just go sit in the darkest room ever, in the quietest space ever, and just cry. And so I felt like he was unrealistic, like you guys already said, but I also felt like, not that I didn't think he respected her, but I didn't think he made space for her. And he just couldn't. Like he just wanted, like you guys said, an easy life of, oh, I don't have to worry about this thing. But people are not always going to be in prime health. And I feel like one thing that, not that these books never consider, is that if this was like a real guy, maybe in future, who knows if that wife that he's with, like some people might have chronic pain issues from the beginning, like Ava did, right? But then the main character, this is not a spoiler if anyone's going to read All's Well, the main character experienced her pain issues because of something else that happened. So like, she wasn't always like that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I feel like that's part of, not like, obviously I'm not married, but I feel like that's part of the like, if I'm going to be with this person, will I be with them if they also end up experiencing something like this? And I feel like that's something that's just not considered by a lot of people.
Mostly men, because
Yeah.
like men being handicapped in any way, if the woman was to leave a sick husband,
They would tear you apart,
blow back,
would rip you to shreds. You would not be able to show your face anywhere.
But he was able to literally walk away from this marriage, get
and nobody's blaming him,
and like still has a good co-parenting relationship, still can see his daughter. She goes to state. Like this is, he literally moved on with his life. Mm-hmm. And if the roles were reversed, I mean, not even a white woman, not even Eleanor Roosevelt could have left her husband when he, you know, it's something to be said for like gender standards and like gender expectations.
I do think it's also because women are raised to be a nurturer. Like if you're literally a woman who doesn't want to spend all your time taking care of someone else, you're literally looked down on.
You're selfish.
And blamed for the situation. So
if you don't want to have kids, you are considered.
I love this comment.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm with that.
I agree.
Like, I think because we change so much in our life, your soulmate or like your spouse should be someone who fits you as you grow and reshape and redefine who you are. And you can meet someone who fits you and molds you perfectly at that time in life when you meet them. But as you go through changes, this is like literally how people grow apart. So I think that your soulmate should be shapeable, pliable, and you should be pliable. And you guys should be able to exist in multiple situations, multiple realities of life, and be able to find a way to make the puzzle work. And so soulmates, having one is questionable because you can have a soulmate for every stage of your life.
Yeah. I always say that. I always think that people have multiple soulmates, but you kind of end up with the one where like you decide to be with and you decide to learn and grow, and like you decide to love them every day, and you decide to, you know, work through everything. So I'm one of those people, I never think that someone has one soulmate, because Monae, to your point,
I support that. One that you can grow with. Like you can wake up and say, you know, what if I want to go to law school? What if I want to stay home and be a stay-at-home mom? What if I want to be a track star? Like you need to be able to imagine multiple, even impossible realities of yourself and see if that person can shape to you and you can shape to that person. I think that's what we should be focused on, not this romanticized fantasy of a romance or soulmate that we see on TV and in books. And I think that this book also kind of talks about that, because you have opposites attract, but it didn't really work out. And these two people will be perfect, except you need multiple elements of your life to be perfect, not just your chemistry with this person. So finding love is hard.
And I also think that's why they literally had like 14 days in 2 different time frames of their life, because that's literally how long the romance could last. Like, you know,
that was the expiration date either way.
Like we're talking about meeting someone at the right time. What if they keep coming together? Like one day they're finally like on the same page. Maybe I think she left the possibility of that.
But my thing is, and this is why I feel like we as a society need to step out of the soulmate must be the person I marry, must be the person I live together with forever and ever and ever, and it can only be this one person forever. Because I think that just puts a lot of pressure on both people, because then it's like, well, you're supposed to do this because you're my soulmate, and you're supposed to be able to handle everything because you're my soulmate. And if you don't, then that means we can't be together because you're evil and not my soulmate. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like your soulmate can also be like your best friend. That can be one soulmate, and then your other soulmate can be the person you did marry. Because I feel like soulmates are, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but I feel like it's a spectrum of like, this person is on this side and the other person's on this side, and they're my soulmates for different reasons. You know what I'm saying? And I just feel like it is a lot to put the pressure of everything on one person. I just don't see it being something sustainable. Again, that's why they literally had 14 days in these 2 different time periods, because it's not sustainable, you know?
I think soulmates offers a illusion of security, and it makes you think that you aren't going to still have to fight and work and compromise and forgive and be patient. Like, it is not, you always, like, love is just a risky thing, but everything that we do is risky. Like, even people have a hard time picking college degrees or what they actually want to go to school for, because everybody's looking for job security, income security, relationship security, and like, it just ultimately doesn't exist.
Yeah. I just, as I was reading this book, I just kept being like, are y'all ever gonna talk? Like, you know,
literally like just vibes, honestly. For most of us,
vibes and nothing else.
I don't know. Let's just vibe and see for these next couple days.
Right. And Shane,
text messages at the end, you still aren't talking. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
Nothing. What are you doing?
Like, what is, and the thing is, it just made me so mad, guys. Like, I'm gonna be honest, it just made me so mad because the miscommunication was to another level. Like, Shane could have really just sent a text message, hey, I'm on this plane because I gotta go save this boy. Because
I forgot about that.
Like, he really sat on the plane and was like, oop, I forgot. Well,
right, like 5 hours has passed, and he's like, I feel like I should be somewhere right now. Oh, like,
and she's over here running around being like, oh my God, is he dead? Like, he could have really sent that text message real quick and been like, just ask the flight attendant, hey, do y'all have the Wi-Fi on this plane? We can afford it.
It was giving clown, and every time her daughter called her out, I was just like, thank you for being like, listen, this is sad.
Like, you are a best-selling author. You can afford this plane Wi-Fi. I believe you can afford this plane Wi-Fi.
It's just like, you're not on the Uber there, not on like you was waiting in line. Like,
I just feel like if she was so important to him, at some point he could have at least been like, oh, I'm kind of hungry. Wasn't I supposed to go eat something?
Like the worst miscommunications I've ever seen in a book was Get a Life. And like, that enraged me. So everything by comparison, I'm like, you know what? It wasn't, because like Chloe, I wanted to like come through the book. That is the worst. That is the worst miscommunication scene I've ever seen.
My worst was people we meet on vacation. I wanted to throw that across the room.
Brea, I completely. It's so funny that you say that, because the miscommunication in that just annoyed me so much. Yeah. And it's also funny, yes, and it's funny that Monae says, because backstory here, People Meet on Vacation is one of Monae's favorite books, and Get a Life, Chloe Brown is one of my favorite books. What? So whenever
like miscommunication, but you love that book, I'm confused.
Right, because in People Meet on Vacation, I was like, you've been friends for so long and you can't talk. What's going on? What's going on? But also, I know that would be me, so I can't
to cross that border into like I don't know. Like I said, I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown first, and that stands as the worst miscommunication. So everything by comparison is like,
It's
oh,
amazing.
okay, this is fine. But yeah, that scene, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but the rambling and like, I know where it is. How are you looking for this? You stuttering, you can't find it. It's in the drawer. You put it in the drawer on page 119. Just go
Not that. Oh my God. So I have a question, and I saw someone mention it like way earlier. Let me see if I can find it. It was something about the genre. Okay, I think it was this one. So I feel like I'm going into it and thinking about it as romance was knock the rating down for me. I think it's more women's fiction. If somebody asked you to kind of like, if somebody was asking for a recommendation on the book, what type of recommendation would you give someone this book for? You know what I mean? Because that's what I'm struggling to think about. Unless somebody was like, oh, I'm looking for a book where two main characters have experienced substance abuse issues and they're both writers. You know what I mean?
I don't think anybody's like specifically asking for
That's
this
what
book.
I'm
Like, I don't
saying.
think there's like a genre that would be like, oh, if you like this, you might like this. It's like
Yeah.
a hard comparison because of like what's going on in there. You know, and I
Exactly.
don't know if I've ever heard anybody ask for people like to see like a romance between people who have like substance abuse issues. But like I have recommended this book to a few people, but they said that they were looking for like general fiction with like romantic elements to it.
Yeah.
And so I gave them this recommendation with the caveat that like there are romantic elements, but it's not like acute romance.
Yeah.
You know, so that's when I recommend it, but I would have never recommended, like you said, to like someone who like wants a romance. And when I try to think about like comps to this, I just can't think of anything that I would like compare it to. So
I feel like I would recommend this book to people who don't like a lot of romance. So like you said, it only has romantical elements to it. So I think if someone is not used to reading romance or they're not into like the sappy, corny, whatever genre before, I would recommend this. Also, realistic romance expectations, because if you go into something with the idea that this is going to be a realistic relationship and you talk about all the things that they're going to have to battle, I think that it sets you up for that. And also, I like books that are complex and they have a deep character study. So I think if you wanted something that was character focused, character centered around like realistic complexities, but then you're just asking for something very specific, like Brea said.
Yeah, I definitely think for me, I couldn't also think about books that I'd be like, oh, this is perfect. Read this because you really love that. But I think I would probably recommend this to people who love books by like Britt Bennett, because I think she in her books really gets after the vanishing half and the mothers. And I would say because her books are like really deep character studies, and she also dives really deeply into the Black community, because in the mothers we dive into like the Black church and like teen moms and like issues with figuring out how to structure your life around a decision you've made, whether good or bad. And then in the vanishing half we follow like the twins, and we follow a lot of like discussions about race and ethnicity and things like that. So I would say that. And then another author, maybe like, this one's going to be really out there, but if you've read anything by Gillian Flynn and you survived and you survived and you were like, these people are terrible, and you were like, great book, this would be so like,
not if you survive.
No, because Gillian Flynn, there's not a single book that woman has written with characters that you're like, oh, these people are not absolutely flawed. So if you're like already used to that type of vibe, then I would recommend this for that. And then if you're more like the YA or like new adult, I would say like Mary H.K. Choi, because her characters are really, really, really flawed, but they're younger. They're like in their early 20s or like early college. So if you're used to that younger side of having any sort of like difficulties, then, but I feel like those three authors are the only people I could think of that if you've read their books and you're like, oh, I really like this vibe, then this would be something good. But it's just so hard because I think Brea mentioned like this book is so unique. It's hard to immediately be like, oh, I saw you bought this book, read this one, but then you have like so many caveats. You're like,
Yeah.
Also,
But
But wait, it brings me back to like me and Chanel's original point is that like all three of us are Black women, and none of us has recommended this as a Black depiction of Blackness. No.
Another book that, as you were talking, Chanel, that this kind of like feels like it's in the same realm is Girl, Woman, Other.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
Because it has a lot of like
that.
different type of relationship dynamics, not necessarily just like romantic.
Yeah.
And there's like some flawed characters, and it's kind of like complex.
Toxic relationships as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is dark contemporary a real genre? Because I'm interested. Drop the Rex.
I honestly don't know that people have said dark contemporary, but
I like
all the authors I mentioned definitely have that, and all of them, except maybe Gillian Flynn, if you take out a couple of books, have the dark contemporary with romantic elements, because Mary's books have romantic, like there's characters who are in relationships, whether or not they break up or whatever, in her books. And then also the same with Britt Bennett. Those are all about relationships. So, and The Vanishing Half has a queer relationship as well. And then, like Brea said, Girl, Woman, Other is the perfect thing for this recommendation. If anyone's looking for like a dark contemporary with romance and messy protagonists, definitely that.
I'm gonna have to check that book out then.
It's so good. I would say
it was really good.
Oh, I'd say contemporary fiction and romance because I think about romance.
Mm.
And characters being endgame.
Yeah. I definitely don't know that if I read a book and they didn't end up together, I'd be like, that was so romantic. But it also depends, because one of my favorite tropes is the trope where they're like, the characters are in this intense whatever relationship and then they don't end up together. I love that trope. I wouldn't wish it upon myself, but I love that trope. And now I can't say what books have that trope in it because it's a spoiler. So I'm wishing you the best. Open Water. Okay. That's interesting. I've seen, I own this book. I will be reading this book.
Who's that by?
Let me look it up. Because I also think it's a short book.
Monae, does this mean you're going to do a video about dark contemporary recommendations now?
Definitely. You're going to see that on my channel.
Right.
For it.
Okay, so I put the author's name and
by okay. But yeah, no, I'm definitely on the hunt for that. Oh, got 2 Black people on the cover.
Right. That's why I bought it. I was like, okay.
Any Black recs you guys want to drop?
Yeah, let's go. Black recommendations.
If anybody has any like actual like lovey-dovey romances where both protagonists are Black, would love those recommendations as well.
Yeah, please grace us with your recommendations. I have some that I will also share. Let me think off the top of my head. So I know that I'm reading, I think Monae recommended this one to me. Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry.
Yep.
Ooh.
It's a banger.
I think it's a YA contemporary, right?
Yes, it's YA contemporary. It's a banger. You had a great time.
I really, really trust Monae's recommendations, especially with contemporary, because I'm really, really picky. Like if a book is boring, I'm DNFing it. Power to the people. I'm not trying to be bored. So she knows that. So when she recommends me books, I'm like, okay, I probably won't be bored. So this one I'm reading either before the end of the month or next month. And then I have some other recommendations, but I'm trying to focus on the ones that are, well, obviously Ace of Spades.
Oh yeah,
that book.
Yeah.
You Should See Me in a Crown. That was cute, sapphic. I Think I Might Love You by Christina C. Jones.
I've heard great things about that.
I loved that's
a
love book. I Think I Might Love You by Christina C. Jones.
I've heard great things. It's short, isn't it? It's a series.
Yeah. It's a series of novellas by Christina C. Jones. If I don't remember the authors of all of these, I am so sorry, but I will slowly say the title. That one was really good. It was really funny. I was giggling. It was really funny. A Song of Wraiths and Ruin. Both characters are Black.
Okay, I have that. Okay, I do have a book by Farah. I don't know how to say her last name.
Oh,
Roshan. I think I have
Ocean.
The Boyfriend Project. I think I haven't read it yet, but I want to read it soon.
I am really amazed and respectful of people who love Jasmine Guillory's romance books.
It's the way you said it.
Oh no,
It's the way you said it. So politically correct. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna write that down.
No, because look, when I first discovered BookTube, I bought The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory, and I was so upset. This
Is
woman
the
is
writing
like,
good?
huh?
Is the writing not good?
Awful.
it was very middle of the road to me.
There was a lot of body shaming. And then there was the whole thing where the main character was like, oh my God, I love that this white man hasn't said anything racist to me yet. Let me educate him.
Bare minimum.
I hated it. So she was like, you have yet to call me a slur.
There was a book I was reading, and
I was mad
that it was a black romance, but then when I started reading it, I realized that the main character, the female love interest, was white, and I was like, okay, interracial, we're doing this. And then he started teaching her about rap music, and I was just
not
like,
that.
the interracial's fine, but it's the teaching of cultures that I'm gonna take my leave.
Yeah. If you're looking for a book that does have the like a good, it has a good way of showing two characters from different races and ethnicities where they talk about culture, and it's not like they talk about their own cultures, and that's Ties That Tether by Jane Igaro. It's by a Nigerian author.
The girl with the glasses.
Yeah, the main character is Nigerian, and then the love interest is Spanish, I believe, or Italian, one of those two. And I really loved that the focus of the book was on their differences culturally and talking about their differences culturally rather than like, you know. And then if you are a fan of mystery thrillers, Wife of the Gods, so good, set in Ghana. So if you're also like, I want to read something that's not set in the US or in Canada or Europe, this is a great one. The caveat being that it does discuss a lot of heavy topics like pedophilia and RAPE. So yeah. But when I tell you I gasped, I read this for Blackathon last year and I had to hold myself. I was like, oh this is juicy. The African tea was there. So
I'm interested. Thank you.
Yeah.
Me too. I've like added like 6 books to my
On the Water. I will definitely be reading.
Yeah. To be fair, I read The Wedding Date and then I DNF'd the proposal. So it might just be me. I have to read the proposal anyways because I'm trying to read all of Reese Witherspoon's book club picks. Not looking forward to it, but wishing you all the best. And me also, wishing me the best. Mm-hmm.
You don't like her book club picks?
No, I don't like Jasmine Guillory's books.
Oh.
Yeah, because I just feel like I never feel anything when I'm reading them except slight annoyance. So we'll see. Happily Ever Afters, super good. I think it's by Elise Bryant. That one's a cute contemporary. Oh my gosh.
Oh, the one that just came out. Okay. That's YA.
Yeah. The first one is like the blue cover. I think the second one's like a purple cover. I think they're companions, but that's a good one. A really great one if you're a middle grade fan. We're probably going to end the recommendations in a little bit, but a really great one if you're a middle grade fan is From the Desk of Joey Washington.
Both books by her. I read both. She
So
has
good.
A Soft Place to Land.
Mm-hmm. That author, I don't even like reading middle grade that often, but when I read that book, I was like, this is so good.
You can see it on my shelf right here. So like they're good.
So good. It's so good. If you like
what was it called? The Death of Joey Washington?
No, the desk here from the desk of Zoe Washington.
I definitely created a whole new title.
Yeah. Immediately after, you need to read A Soft Place to Land.
It is so good. Another one is, I'm trying to Google them. Of course, if you have not read anything by Elizabeth Acevedo, all of her books are good. All of them. All phenomenal. The Black Flamingo. How could I forget? Iconic. That's a great one if you like. I think it's a novel in verse, but it's so good. It's very queer. It's very amazing. Did make me
The
cry.
Black Flamingo.
Yeah, The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta.
This has a cute cover, and they lived happily ever after.
Oh, I love this. Yes, The Black Flamingo stands. Rise. Also, if you're like a comics and manga or anything of that vibe fan, check please. Really cute. Follows the main character who's not Black, but the author is Nigerian. So it follows the main character who is a YouTuber slash. Huh?
The author's Nigerian of Check
Yeah,
Please?
the author of Check Please is Nigerian.
Who knew?
Right.
No.
Right. So if you love baking, you love hockey, and you love YouTube, read. I don't know why I said watch. Read that book. I think at least the first 2 volumes are out, and it's so good. The friendship vibes, amazing. The romance, amazing. It's also queer. I think I mentioned this, but I'm not sure. If you like books that will confuse you, and you'd be like, what did I just read? Catherine House. I loved that book. A lot of people hate it. But if you like weird books, read that.
Definitely heard mixed reviews on that one.
Yeah, you're either going to love or hate it.
Yeah.
For me, I was like, oh, wow, amazing. And then my last recommendation before I let Monae and Brea, like, kind of, if they have any more, is Dead, Dead Girls. This is a mystery that is set in the 1920s, and it follows our main character who is Black and Sapphic, and she's trying to investigate some murders that are happening. So if you love like historical fiction, you love mysteries, you love really being kept on your toes, definitely read this book. It's so good. And I think the Sapphic relationship in it is really, really cute and also very like dramatic. I just loved it so much. And the mystery did make me gasp. I felt like I was in the 20s. I was giggling with the girlies. So that's my last recommendation. But I'm going to go ahead and put some of these in here on the screen for anyone.
Oops, someone used the word dark contemporary again. Let's see.
Oh, okay, we love to see it. Oh, I haven't heard about this. Let me look it up.
I've heard Patsy. It's on an island, or they go back to an island. I think it's queer, like Sapphic, or gender non-binary. I'm not sure, but I've seen it a lot.
Oh, I've seen this cover.
Yeah, I've seen the cover a lot.
Yeah, I've seen that cover. Oh, I didn't know about this.
Now it's been called dark contemporary.
Right, we need to just make that the word.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a genre that I would literally buy every single book from.
Yeah.
Because I think that the thing that excites me the most about reading more books from Black authors, or in general, that always just excites me, is seeing things that so many people have, sometimes like seeing things that people have like written about, talked about, but from the perspective of Black author. Like I just love it so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
so we have this. Lakewood was so good. I literally felt physically sick after finishing.
Hold on.
Monae's grabbing some books. We're not done.
I'm like turning around looking.
So excited. Yeah, I'm like looking. I think I've listed all the ones that I
just recently read. I mean, this is going old school. And if you like sci-fi, I just recently read Dawn by Octavia E. Butler.
Oh.
So good. I also recently read Wahala, but I don't know who I'd recommend that to because it's kind of like a take on friendships, but they're messy. So if you like messy and toxic friendships, then that's like a pretty good one. What else did I recently read? The final revival of Opal and Nev.
Oh, I've heard that one's good.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. And the audiobook is great because it's a full cast. So if you liked, what is that white woman's name? Daisy Jones and the Six. It's like the better version of that book to me.
Oh, I didn't like Daisy Jones and the Six. So
Me neither, but I loved Opal and Nev.
Opal and Nev is like, read that.
Yeah.
Read that. I read Daisy Jones and it was like, I read the final revival first and loved it.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
And then I read Daisy Jones and I was like, this your king?
Right. I think when I read Daisy Jones, I was like, this can't be the woman we're all giggling about. This can't be the woman everybody's getting interviewed over. It really can't. It really can't. Anyway, Monae, do your little recommendations.
Charming as a Verb.
I've seen that around.
You.
Highly recommend this one. And then I have 3 nonfictions. That Black Girl.
Ooh, I have that on audio.
Oh, I have that on my TBR.
You have to play it. You have to play it. This is like, the problem with mainstream feminism and why some of us are kind of hesitant because the movement is being taken over. This is like the hood girls, the hood Black girls, the Megan Thee Stallions and the Trinas of the world. This is for us. And then also Eloquent Rage is another Black feminist one, but it's definitely more eloquent. Like this, like I said, this is the Megan Thee Stallion, and Eloquent Rage is more like a normal Black woman going through society. She talks about a lot of things and like representation, and I think that those are like 2 perfect examples of Black women. And I just finished this last night, which is the 1619.
Yeah, I've seen that floating around too.
This, I think, should be a mandatory read for Black people because
let me add that to my TBR because I am Black.
Well, when I said I was mandatory, so let me know.
Right. Before she takes my little card away, let me put that in there.
I have a degree in history, and in terms of Black history from like the dawn of America up until the present day, I have not seen a comprehensive, collective, single book that will give you all of the knowledge you need to know about Black history in America. Like it starts from the first boat all the way up to George Floyd and Trump. Oh, wow. It takes you everywhere, from the economy to public housing to the social justice movements to capitalism, like everything you need to know, every massacre, every movement, every person that matters, schools, towns. Like when you are done with this, you are going to clearly understand Black history in America. So I think that this should be mandatory reading to understand the full scope of like our history here. So those are my
gotta pick that up.
I wrote so many like notes in this book. It's crazy.
Cool. Anything else? Any not last words. Any final statements for this live show? Anything you guys want to plug or share?
I know that Tia Williams is the author for 7 Days of June, has another really popular book that I think someone in the chat, La Rosa, read yesterday or is reading. They really enjoyed it. So I do plan to read more from the author because I think that the writing was fantastical. I think that she put a lot of, I don't want to say pop culture, but there are some ongoing
book Twitter was in there.
Yeah, ongoing conversations in the community and in the Black community that she incorporated into her book without making it feel like it was pop culture. And so I am interested in reading The Perfect Find. That's what it's called. So I will be reading that.
Cool.
Yeah, overall, I say I enjoyed the book. It was definitely, I can understand why some people had some qualms and like why it like wasn't a perfect book for everybody. But I think why I liked it was because it wasn't a perfect book and there was clearly like some very realistic things in there. And to Monae's point, I definitely want to read The Perfect Find. I know that it's getting, like it just got a new cover, I believe, so that it got republished. So I'm definitely going to be picking that up because I did enjoy just like the idea behind the book and like the writing style. So I'll definitely pick that up by her too. And I think she might have some other things too. I'm seeing like The Accidental Diva, It Chicks, and 16 Candles. I have not read the synopsis of any of those, but I'm looking on Goodreads and she definitely has some other works out there too. So
yeah, I think my favorite thing about this book was the writing and how real the characters felt. I'm just so sad that I entered it thinking I was getting a romance. Like, you know, but I really will be reading more from this author because I just think her writing is so great. Like it really sucks you in. And I think she's a hilarious writer. Like that prologue alone, amazing.
The beginning part when it was like
on Scrib.
Yeah, she said something about like she was tied to a leather chair and someone was feeding her snickerdoodles. I was like, is it me? Is it me?
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this live show. Don't forget, we are reading The Love Hypothesis this month and then The Push next month. And Monae is going to be on the live show for The Push. So
I will.
If you guys love her as much as I do, come back for that one because we will be having a time.
We're gonna be talking about motherhood.
Oh man, I'm gonna be in the comments for that one. I'm gonna sit there and enjoy the tea for that one. That book is
right. I'm gonna be sitting there and enjoying because Monae is a mother, and I'll be letting her take the floor.
I'm not a mother, but now I'm like, do I want to be? I don't know.
What? That book will have you know, like you see something uncomfortable, like when guys see another guy get hit in the nuts and they just like cross their legs.
Yeah.
Reading that book had me crossing my legs and like clenching because I'm like, I don't want no more.
Some of my biggest fears are in that book. So I'm like,
But thank you for having me and having me again next month.
Don't forget to check out both Brea and Monae's links in the description. And I will see you all for the next live show. Goodbye.
Thank you.